Hi everybody, nice to see you all. Thanks for coming back to the channel. Today I am going to talk about the one and only time in my life that I was, I think, genuinely mistaken for a native speaker when I was speaking a foreign language. This is not a humble brag. I categorically do not believe that I speak this language at a native level or that I have ever spoken it at a native level. My level of ability has been genuinely advanced and is still quite advanced today in this language. But today I'm going to talk about an episode when I was bizarrely taken for a native, and not just 5 seconds, or I should say over an extended period of time. Anyway, I'll tell you the story. You can tell me what you think of it. The language in question is Japanese, and the idea of being taken for a native speaking Japanese is so absurd in the sense that it makes me smile just to think about it. But many years ago, about 20 years ago now, yes, 20 years ago, I was living in Japan. I was working as a translator. I translated financial documents. No, it's not that interesting, but you've got bills to pay in life, right? Anyway, I had translated a document. It was an earnings report. I had translated it for, obviously, a Japanese client. And often when you translate a document, the client will come back with a few queries. They want to check a few terms, pieces of terminology. They want to ask you about a couple of sentences where they're not 100% sure that what you've said is correct. It's perfectly normal and natural for clients to check these things with you. Once they've taken receipt of the translated version of their original document and gone through it and checked it. So sometimes you would have to interact with people who were responsible for this at the client company, right? Often this would be done through some sort of intermediary, but sometimes people would just call you and talk to you directly. So anyway, I was called by a Japanese lady who was responsible for this stuff at her company. I picked up the phone. Obviously, she didn't know who I was. I'd never spoken to her before. I must have said, "Hi, my name's Sam." You know, you start talking to someone on the phone, you don't know who they are, they rattle their name off, your brain doesn't quite process it. Maybe she was confused. I don't know what happened. We probably spent about 10 minutes talking about these various queries that she had. It was nothing complex. Nothing difficult. She queried a couple of terms. Is this the right term here? Is this how you say this in English? And I said, yes, that's fine. That's exactly how we say that in this context. I remember I was feeling confident. I knew the terms that I needed to know to converse effectively. What can I say? I don't know. Maybe I was just having an unusually good day, speaking unusually clearly, unusually fluently. I don't know. Anyway, I was basically guiding her through these various queries that she had, and I was probably speaking at a pretty advanced level on a piece of subject matter where I knew what was going on, and that helps a lot. Anyway, I said something after we'd been talking for whatever 10 minutes. I must have said, yeah, in Britain we really don't use that term, we use this term, you know, that's what we British people do here. And she said, Oh, are you not Japanese? I said, no, I'm not Japanese. No, I'm British. And she was like, oh, I thought you were Japanese. I can't remember how she said it now. Like I said, this is 20 years ago. But she seems to be genuinely confused. She genuinely seemed to have thought that she was talking to a Japanese person. And to this day, I still feel a little bit startled when I think about that, because I don't think of my Japanese as being native-like. Perhaps there were occasions, moments, contexts in which my ability to function linguistically in a certain environment was on a par with the natives, but that doesn't mean I was native-like in every sense. In terms of my pronunciation, my exact word choices, I would not expect any Japanese person ever to have thought that I was a native. But apparently she did. Obviously, if you're a white guy, then it's gonna have to happen over the phone, right? But we were talking on the phone, and I don't know what to say about it. It was quite peculiar. Like I said, I must have said my name, but she probably didn't process it, and Maybe she just thought that I was a Japanese person with a slightly weird accent. Or maybe he's from Tohoku or something like that. Maybe that's what went through her mind. I don't know what went through her mind. But it wasn't this kind of faux praise that you often get from Japanese. This sort of a Nihongo jozu, that kind of thing. It wasn't that. It was a, oh, you're not Japanese, I thought you were. And then that was it, and it was just over. It wasn't that sagai sagai type thing that Japanese people do. Yeah, weird. I don't know what to I don't quite know what to make of it. Because, you know, Japanese people will often say to you, oh, you're just like a native, you know, if I hadn't seen your face, I'd have thought you were... Obviously, this is just, they're just being nice, they're just being polite, they're trying to be encouraging. But that was the one occasion on which somebody actually seemed to think that I was a native. Now, if we'd kept talking, undoubtedly that impression would have been lost. You know, people like to discuss this subject. Is it possible to pass for a native when you speak a foreign language? That's something that I'd like to talk about a bit more. But most obviously the answer is maybe, if you only talk to them for 10 seconds. If you talk to them for 10 minutes, it's going to be a lot harder. If you talk to them for 10 hours, then it's going to be virtually impossible if you're not a native. Obviously, the more you speak to people, the more information they get about the way you speak. And eventually you're going to trip yourself up and say something stupid that a native would never say. But it's interesting. My mum came to visit me once when I was in Japan, and we went out to a bar somewhere in Tokyo one evening. And I was chatting to some friends while my mum was sitting nearby. And what was it now that my mum told me about this? There was a Japanese girl sitting nearby listening to me talk to one of my Japanese friends, and this Japanese girl apparently said, I didn't hear it, this is a story my mum told me, she was listening to me speak Japanese, and she said, that guy is probably a half, i.e. she figured that I was probably half Japanese. Did she say that in English? She must have, or my mum would not have understood what she was saying. Or maybe she just heard the word hafu, as the Japanese said. I don't know, I'd have to ask my mum. But my mum's told me this story more than once. She said, we were sitting in that bar and you were talking Japanese, and there was a girl nearby who swore that you must be a half to be able to speak Japanese like that. I feel quite happy when I hear that. My Japanese is still pretty good, but certainly my active vocabulary, my range of expression, these things have suffered. And I know that I don't express myself in Japanese as fully as I would like to be able to. I don't express myself as fully as I think by rights I should be able to. But that is a story for another time. It's nice to know that there are some really positive appraisals of my Japanese there in my background from people who didn't have any reason to flatter me. But I want to stress that I do not claim to have any sort of native-like proficiency in Japanese, not with respect to pronunciation, reading, writing, grammar, my knowledge of the Japanese lexicon, no. Certainly not after all these years. It's just an interesting story. It's just a little piece of data that I once received about my Japanese. That's it, just a little story, nothing that important for today. Just thought I would share that with you. Anyway, thank you very much for coming by. I do appreciate it. I always appreciate it. If you've got any questions, comments, if you've got any suggestions for other videos, if you've got any suggestions for topics that I could talk about in the future, all of this stuff would be very welcome in the comments below. And that's it. Thanks very much. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.